Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Karen, Sunny Art Academy. This is what we're painting today, a field of flowers. And we're not even going to use pencils. I know that the majority of the time that I paint and draw, I always draw first and then I paint and I make sure I erase all my pencil lines so it looks like I haven't drawn. But that's the way I do my art. But today we're not going to do that. We're going to do something different. Yay! We're going to go straight to the watercolor paper and I will show you what you have to do to get the depth of field. You see in the background, it's kind of out of focus, and in the foreground, you have the flowers that are up close. That's what I'm going to teach you today. This is the image that we're going to be painting, giving you a downloadable for this class today, so then you can download it, print it out if you want it in front of you, or you can just follow along with the video. This is for inspiration. I am not going to try to recreate this photograph that somebody else, took and try to sell it. That's not the point of this, because there's a copyright laws and all that good stuff. But that's not what we're doing. We're using this as an inspiration. I don't even know where I got it on the internet. I love these orange flowers and the purple blooms, and then there's a variety of colors. It also has a depth of field. That's the other thing that I wanted to show you guys. We are creating a wildflower painting, and it's going to be wet on wet. And this is how I'm going to show you how we can create this depth of field with wet on wet watercolor. So the first thing that we're doing, if you look at this image, the first thing we're doing is we are going to create a background. It's going to be light because I want to paint on top of it. These are very orange, so you don't want the background to be too dark, or we're not going to be able to capture this color. With watercolor, which is different from all the other mediums, we are going to paint on top of this, but it's got to be light enough so you can capture this color. If you don't create a light image, then you're not going to be able to cover up whatever dark image it is. Like with acrylic, you can paint on top of something and basically get any color you want. Same with oil. You just pile it up on top. It's a thick acrylic is a thick medium. This is not. This is very thin. Watercolor is very thin medium. So like I said in the beginning of the series, this is the type of watercolor paper that I'm using. It's a Strathmore watercolor. I got 24 sheets. They're not in a binder of any kind. They're just loose because I use them all the time. So anyway, that's what we're using for this painting. And what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this tape. It's just artist tape. I haven't even opened this one. And since we're using wet on wet, the paper's going to get wet and then it's going to buckle. So we want to get this tape and tape the painting down. So what you're going to want to do is tape it down to a board or something. I'm just taping it to my table. I have craft paper under my table. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I've been painting in watercolor for a very, very long time, and I have these huge watercolor brushes because I used to do very, very large. If you're going to paint on a page this size, you do not need something this large. I used to paint on pages that are as large as my table. That's really what these are for. They're really not for small paintings. I'm grabbing this right here. This is a number 12. And I'm loading it with just clean water because we're going to soak the paper. You want to soak the paper. So I'm moving the water. Some of it's puddling up, some of it isn't, but you want to soak the whole thing. So looking at our page, there are There's blue right here, some like purpley blue colors. There's some orange. There's green. Everything that's in here, all of these flowers are also in the background. So I'm just going to just jump in and start with a green. The green that I'm doing is kind of a chartreuse type green. And I'm just painting it in the background. Lots of water. Little bit of color. Once I get anything on here, just any kind of color on here, I'm going to take the tip of my brush and start painting these shapes. I'm going to start painting like the orange shapes, and there's brown shapes. So you need lots of water. I think I'll just start out with the orange. You need lots of water and a little bit of paint. And you're just going to go in here, and my brush was dirty. So I'm going to clean my brush again and create these little shapes back here. And in fact, this orange really isn't the color that this orange is a little different than I expected. I need it to have more yellow in it. So I'm going to go in and pick up some yellow, kind of change this orange up just a tad. So this is very, very wet. This right here is not as wet. I'm going to go in. I'm just going to start painting these shapes of these flowers, the orange flowers. And I don't know if you see that right here, there's not a lot, it's not a lot of water. So when I go in, it doesn't really bleed. It's staying the way it looks like in the picture, believe it or not. And you want to relax and have a good time. You don't really want to try to make everything perfect, because nobody's going to see this picture. Nobody's going to know what it really looked like. I'll do the same thing over here. And as it dries, you can make the shapes end up being more prominent. They show up better. They're more in focus. I don't know how to explain that any other way. Focus, it has to do with focus. Okay, so I'm rinsing my brush. I'm going to go in and try putting in, we need more water in the background. So I'm putting clean water. See, something's on my brush there. Okay. So let's do some purple. These flowers are kind of a purpley blue, and you'll just have to play with the colors on your palette. So, when we're looking at all of the different types of brushes, we were making marks. and one of the marks that we were making were kind of like were just little dabs of paint, and you're just pushing the brush down and picking it up. That's basically all I'm doing here. So that's what this one, this needs to be repainted because it should be more in focus, but that's okay. We're going to go over here, and there's another one over here. And we have some of this in the background. This is already dried, so I'm going to need to put more water in here so they're more out of focus. Another thing that you can do, which I do often when I'm doing wet on wet, is that if I always have paper towels with me, and if this is not really what I want it to look like, you can go in and dab it up a little, and that's more like what I want it to look like. So that's something else that can happen when you're painting. Because this color is in the background here, but it's not as, I don't know, it's muted. It's not as, it doesn't look muted here. Okay. You know, I think the background needs more green back here. Now that the other thing about it is with watercolor, is that you could be painting and then it dries and then you go, oh, wow, I put so much water on there, there's not enough color. So I go back in and add more color, and that's basically what I'm doing. And if you see, you can see that there's streaks. So basically I'm taking my brush and I'm creating those streaks with my brush over the wet area, and then we're layering it. So we're super light, and then we get super dark as we go. Well, not super dark. We just get darker as we go. We have another one of those flowers coming up here. And this needs to be a little more prominent. We have another flower that comes in. I almost want to put the stem in first so I can show and see what it looks like. Another brush I like to use when I'm painting long skinny things is a liner brush. So I am going to get out my liner brush and start adding like that right there. Let's see, I need a little brown. So this flower has a stem that goes like that. I'll make sure I have that in there. And it's brown, believe it or not green. And then it kind of disappears. Some of these have that in there also. So it's still wet up here, and I'm going to go in. I'm taking my brush. It has a tiny bit of water and paint, and I'm going to put some more streaks in here. Remember, with wet on wet, it's going to spread out. Remember the flowers that we did? You know, it's going to spread out. It's okay to put the streaks in there so it looks like there's flowers, and you know, and maybe you don't want to do it so straight either. I was like, no, really straight. Flowers are not totally straight. So All right, the next step is I'm gonna start adding more here. Ooh, I'm gonna get the blue off my brush and go in with green. And start creating these long strokes. And wildflowers and grass is not totally straight, so you want to make sure that you have a lot of variety. Now I'm using this, a lot of times I use a liner brush. Okay, the next step is I'm going to put in some of these other, I'm going to put in the this color. I have to figure out how to mix that color. It's basically a purple. It's sort of a hot pink purple combination, magenta, but it has a lot of water in it because it's more pink. So it's a magenta, but it needs lots of water. Kind of round. Trying to figure out the shape here. That color is also in the background. So we're going to add a little to the background. Bitty dots. So it looks like it's all part of the wildflowers. I'm using the very, very tip of my brush to create these strokes. So something else that's going on with this is you have the color and then it's really dark underneath. I don't know if you can, I don't know if you see this, but when you look at this painting or this, when you look at this photograph, it's really light at the top, but then there's dark underneath. So that's the next thing we're gonna add is come up with a dark, it's almost like a dark brown. I'm gonna add some purple to it because purple is wonderful to add to other colors to create dark, to create backgrounds and shadows. Purple's great for shadows. So that's sort of what we're going to do next is I'm going to go into the ones that we've already done and I'm going to add just a little bit of this dark. Some of it's really wet. I almost wish I had waited. I guess this is kind of, I don't like that one, so I'm going to just blob it. And we'll go back to it. Some of them, I'm I'm trying to figure out, they have like streaks in them. Almost needed to wait to get it to dry first. And then it kind of goes like that, and then it has a stem. So these out here, I'm putting more water on my brush so it's not so dark. Because remember, if you add water to any color, it's going to make it lighter in watercolor. So I'm going to let that. The other thing I need to do is, I don't have any green. I need lots of green. Pick up green. I'm not going to do the chartreuse green. I'm going to do a different green. It's kind of more of a blue green. And all this needs to have blue green. The background. This can be out of focus a little. There's grass going like that. I'm barely touching my paper. Putting that in there. I'm going back with just clean water around some of the grass. It's going to blend a little, and then we can go back and add more later. So at this point, everything's kind of muted. I want to go in and add just a little more color around the white to cover up some of this white paper. And then we're going to let it dry, and then we'll come back with more of a dry brush. The watercolor it's dry. It's not completely dry, but it's almost completely dry. And the next step is to go in and put in more details and make these images more prominent, and they pop off the page more. I think I'll start with these dark purple. Figure out how I find the colors that I mixed up for them. That's blue over Where's the purple? Guys, I know I had a purple. May even clean up a spot on my palette. Is that the color? It has more blue in it. So we want to try to mix up the same colors we had before. And that takes practice. And then I'm going to go into these flowers that they're kind of muted right now. I'm going to go in and put in more detail so they will pop off the page more. So some of them have like this, they're darker at the bottom and they have lighter at the top. And the brush I'm using is a smaller brush. It has a little tip on it. And I'm using that tip and pressing down to create like almost like a drop shadow underneath. This one looks out of focus, but I'm going to bring it up into focus so we have more flowers that are actually what could be considered in focus. And remember, the other thing that you have to remember is that no one's going to see that photograph. They don't really know what you're painting is based off of. So you're going in and adding detail. There was one right here we didn't add. I'm going to go in and add more here. And if it helps, something that I do many times, I use two different brushes. Like if I have purple on here, I may use this for something else. What I want to do at this point is I want to make sure I go in and add these stems on, so that you know that they're a flower and there's a stem on them. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to use my liner brush for that. And it had some brown. I was using brown and I was using purple and brown to create these stems. So we had stems there and they kind of got muted. So I'm going to go back and make them a little more prominent. I was going to do that here. So they don't look like they're out of focus. So I have purple on my paint on my brush again. I'm going to go in and blend some of this. So there was one right. What I have on my brush is a lot of water and a little bit of purple to kind of mute in this flower that is the flower right here. I kind of added it here. It's okay. It didn't have to be perfect. So there's another one over here. You need lots of water, and you can add one here. There's one right here. Lots of water, a little bit of purple. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to go in and I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to add green leaves, or what would say the green grass and leaves. So I'm kind of doing that next. I'm going to go in and work on these poppies. I'm cleaning my brush really, really well because I've had blue and green on it, and I want to get this orange back mixed up, ready to go. And this is where we're going to go in and add these poppies, and we're going to put in what they really look like. Some of them have like a darker side to them. Ooh, that's too dark. Picking up that orange again and painting this poppy in here. I'm picking up a little bit of that darker orange to add to this side. If you find a really white spot, that would be a good place to put a new flower so you can really see it. Now each one of these that we've made more prominent, we want to make sure we put a stem underneath it. A darker, more prominent stem. Kind of the same thing we did with these other ones. We want to do the same thing with these poppies. And so we want a green. I'm going to grab some green. I'm going to use my liner brush. I'm going to grab some green, put it over here. Trying to figure what color of green. I think I want more yellow in that. So I'm going to get this green. I'm going to decide if that's the exact green I want or not. And we're going to put in streaks. And they can be curvy streaks, straight streaks. These are kind of thick, aren't they? I don't know that I want them to be so thick. I want them to be darker. I don't really like. I'm making them a little darker. Ooh, that's like too dark. Like, wow! So you're playing around with it. Now, once you've painted this painting and if you like it, great. If you don't like it, paint it again. I can't tell you how many times I've painted a painting 3 or 4 times before I really like it, go, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Okay, there's lots of stems in here, and they're going different ways. And remember, you can always overwork your painting. So you have to also decide at one point and go, okay, I'm done. So a couple of things that we haven't done is we have these like brown weedy things coming up here. I may add those just because there's a lot of contrast, high contrast over here. There isn't over here, so I may add a little bit of that. And then the next step is I'm trying to decide if I want to do anything with those guys. I kind of don't, but there seems to be more green down here than what I have, so I'll probably add more green right here. Maybe a little more green here, and then these little brown weeds. I'll probably do that just because this is so dark and this is so light, just to give it a little bit of balance. I may not go crazy with it, but I may add a little bit of it. And I'm using the same brown. To do the weeds, I'm going to use brown. I am going to add a little bit of purple to it. So it's not just, well, I may do the brown first and then add the purple. So I'm going to go in here and add this weed. Okay, so now we've introduced a new color, which means that we need to introduce that color more than once. Putting a bunch of water on here because I'm going to add one here, but I don't want it to be, it needs to be kind of watery. So since we already have that color on our paintbrush, I'm going to add a weed over here just so, remember what we said, once you add a color that you've never added before, it's good to add it more than once. Ooh, I don't even like that. So I'm going to get I'm just going to dot that out. I didn't like it. I got rid of it. There you go. Ugh, I didn't like it. Okay, so now I gotta figure out. Maybe I'll just do something smaller. No, this brush isn't doing what I want it to do. That's another thing. I may be using a brush that I go, yikes, I don't like you. I'm going to put you down. I'm going to use something else. All right. So what I'm going to do with these weeds is, remember, I'm adding purple to the brown just to make it darker so there's more than one color in this weed. This little, whatever this is. That's almost exactly like I did before, right? I don't like it. So what am I going to do? It's like I got to have something over here. Okay, just leave it. Leave it, Karen, leave it. Like these spiky little weeds. Yeah, and they're like really bright. They really stand out too much. So, just like I did on the other side, I'm just going to take a paper, just plain piece of paper, paper towel, and I'm just going to do that. And it's too wet. It's already dried. So I'm going to wet it just a little. And I'm trying to mute them back just a little because they're just too much. I wanted them over there, but I didn't want them to take such center stage. So I wetted this down a little, and I'm just going in and trying to dab up a little bit of the paint. Another way to do it is take a clean brush and go in and dab up the paint as much as you can. Sometimes you can't totally get it up, obviously. Okay, so now they're not so muted. I mean, now they're muted, they're not so prominent, which is, whew, I didn't like them. So the next step could be, maybe we go in and add some more color and definition to these. I don't really remember what color it was. It's not the same color. That's okay. I kind of like that color, right? So I added the color at the bottom of the flower. I added the intensity of the color at the bottom of the flower. So then it's kind of layered. You have the dark at the bottom, up to the lighter at the top. So in the photograph, this is more focused than this, but that kind of bugs me because anything in the foreground should be in focus. So I'm going to add more detail to this and maybe more detail to this, because it doesn't seem, to me, it doesn't seem right. Anything in the foreground should be more in focus. So I'm going to add more detail. This is artistic license. Everybody asks about artistic license. This is, I made the choice. I'm not going to do what the photograph is doing. So, what do you think? Photograph and a new painting.